Good morning. This is Krista Campbell. Thank you for joining us today for Rural Water District Goes High Accuracy. Before we get started, I'm going to go through our normal announcements. Be sure to post your questions. We will have time at the end of the webinar to answer some of them. The questions that we don't get to will be included in our Q&A document that will be posted on GeoNet after the webinar. The webinar is being recorded and will be posted on GeoNet and Meetup. You should receive a follow-up email that has a link to these locations so you can find the recording. It usually takes a couple of days before that's posted. So on to the exciting stuff today. I'm excited to welcome Travis Anderson and John Simpson to our webinar. Travis is the district engineer at LEAC's Water District in Southern Ohio, and John is the general manager. We have asked Travis and John to share their story with you because listening to them is inspirational. I've talked to them a couple times, and I'm really excited to share their story today in our webinar. Travis began at LEAC's Water District with no GIS background and has successfully implemented a field workflow that has enabled his field technicians to contribute highly accurate data to their GIS. And guess what? He says it was easy. So I'm really excited to hear his story. But before he gets started, I'm going to turn it over to David. David's our industry manager for water. He's going to discuss how Esri technology has evolved to a point where it's really helpful to these rural water districts like LEAC's Water. David, did you want to go ahead and get started?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thanks, Krista. Just wanted to actually go over a couple of things, some of the small water system challenges, and you'll see that our team here has a focus now on small water systems, and I'll get to that point here quickly. Talk a little bit about the technology, and then of course, yes, we'll turn it over to Travis and John for the LEAC story. And we're actually going to mix this up a little bit. This webinar will be a bit different. That we'll have Travis actually run through some things. We'll a lot more conversational, almost like a radio broadcast in terms of how we want to engage, just because their story is, again, as Krista said, inspirational. It's very fascinating how these folks have put this all together. So what I want to start off with is just the water systems out there. And so if you look at, when Esri gets involved with lots of water utilities across the U.S., of course we work with the major water systems out there. And here's a map of the permitted water systems that have more than 100,000 connections. And then if you take a look at, those that have more than 10,000 connections, it starts to get a little more full. And you'll notice very quickly there are some blue dots and some kind of orangish dots. The blue dots get their water from surface water, and the orange dots get their water from groundwater. So there's a source of water that feeds, a particular water system. And then, of course, if we start to look at over 1,000 connections, which now we're getting into the small water systems, it really starts to explode. And there are also folks out there with less than 1,000 connections, and that brings us to our full water system, population here in the U.S., over 51,000, or nearly 51,000 permitted facilities out there. And you saw just the explosion in numbers of water districts, and every one of those have the basics. They have piping, they have valves, they have hydrants, they have service connections. They're providing safe, clean drinking water to their customers, and this is really the frontier that we're trying to accommodate, because every one of these folks have challenges. You may have heard on the news about the Flint water. That has really brought the attention of water quality into the scene as well. When we kind of look at this next map, I've kind of underlain the drought monitor from September 12th. This is one of those live feature services there in ArcGIS Online, but you can see that drought's also not just a West Coast thing, it's across the entire United States. So drought throws even yet a more interesting challenge for these small water systems as to how they actually meet their water demand, especially now here in the West with all those being groundwater based. It does present a challenge. So when we talk about small water system challenges in general, one of the things that I have conversations about quite a bit are source water protection. And what we have two elements to that. There's the quantity piece that when you're defining your basically your source water protection plan, you would define your source. LEAX will probably, they'll talk a little bit about that. So there's the quantity piece, but then also there's the water quality. And there you need to, once you understand your source, whether it be groundwater or surface water, you want to define the actual pollutant sources. Do you have any industrial complexes? Do you have any, say, agricultural runoff? You just start to map and understand where you might have sources. That doesn't mean they are polluting, that just means these are potential sources. So when you kind of look at the quantity and quality and put that into a GIS, you can really start to paint a picture. And as you develop these protection plans as part of your EPA permitting, it just shows them that you have a handle of what's going on, and you can be quite responsive to the challenges that you face. The other big question that kind of seems to be coming down, of course, with these small water systems is this thing called asset management. And lots of folks are talking about it, and some not really sure what asset management means. And we're not going to go through all that today. That could be a 4-hour webinar in its own right. But one of the main things that I talk about with asset management, it really boils down to what do you got and what are you doing. And so one of the very simple things is building an asset registry in the GIS. That's just a collection of your pipes and wires and valves and water mains and such. Wanting to know the asset condition, is it corrosive? Is it corroded, rusty, is it in good condition, those sorts of things, and then just tracking your maintenance activities. You're doing that just so you know what you're doing to your system, but also it's a system of audit, so you can report back to the EPA that yes, you're maintaining that, and you package all of that up to understand, where you should be investing in the system. When it comes to technology, one of the things that we've been working on really hard is kind of back in the day, a lot of folks said, well, I can't do that GIS. It's too hard. It costs too much and it's too difficult. I don't have a degree in GIS. Well, that's exactly why Travis is such a treat, because he doesn't have that GIS background, and he'll show you kind of how they did it. But one of the things I want to talk about with cost, Esri is very committed to making it more affordable. The ArcGIS desktop entitlement, if you don't know what that is, please give us a ring. We'll get you hooked up. It's for all of you that have a desktop license that may have been sitting around. You got an ArcGIS Online account. You may not know that, but it's if you don't have that signed up, we can, as I say, get that straightened out. Of course, the ArcGIS Online subscriptions has made it very affordable for you to get involved without even a desktop license. And of course, once you do, we have all these free configured maps and apps. And of course, we've put an application on the App Store for iOS, Android, and Windows 10 called Collector, and that really has changed the way small water systems are getting into GIS. And again, Travis will talk about that. From complexity, we've come a long way. We like to say sometimes we're not in your father's GIS anymore. We've come a long way from the command line into good old ArcMap that's fully featured. But even then, some of those are like, wow, that's still a difficult product. And so as we've evolved desktop into ArcGIS Pro, we've adopted that Microsoft ribbon aspect. It looks and feels more like some of the mainstream apps, and people are liking the ease of use of ArcGIS Pro. But by far the most simplest application out there is Collector for ArcGIS. And again, Travis will talk about that. And it's companion apps that bolt on to Collector, such as Navigator and Workforce. And so really, if you were to plot out the ease of use and the functionality, we've been working quite hard diligently in making it easier to use. So, as we go across the time, we just started off with just collecting points, and then of course we started collecting all of our features, and then we started adding in linked tables, and of course now with the latest functionality, we're rolling out the high accuracy. So, you let us know what's next. We take your feedback quite seriously, and that's Collector is one of those programs that has evolved by working with our users and adding that functionality over time. So with that, yeah, there you go. Krista's reminding me, before we get started with Travis, I actually wanted to ask a couple of questions, just so we can kind of set the stage of who's out there. And so Krista?
Here we go. Poll number 1. Are you using Collector for ArcGIS? Yes or no? If you could just take a second to go ahead and answer, we'd appreciate it. Do you know what Collector is? Hopefully you do now, especially after David's presentation. All right, so we're going to close this one. I believe, David, you had a second question as well? So are you using Collector paired with a external receiver? So it looked like about half of you are using Collector. So those of you that answered yes to using Collector, if you could just answer this question as well. And those of you that answered no, you get a minute off here. Interesting, it looks like about 40% of you that did answer yes to using Collector for ArcGIS are also using it paired with an external receiver. Thank you so much for answering the polls. David, I'm going to send it back to you.
Okay, well, yeah, great. I mean, we always like to test the audience and understand, where you're coming from. That, so it still sounds like, all those out there that are interested in Collector and the high accuracy. Travis is going to have a great story to tell. So actually, I'll turn this over to Travis.
Okay. I guess, David, I'll give a little bit of background on Lee Atwater. We are in southeastern Ohio. Maybe I can zoom that out and people can get an idea of where we are in the country. LEAC started in 1968 to serve the village of Albany and 250 other surrounding families. Since then, we've grown quite a bit. We have around 500 miles of water line. We have 15 employees, 10 tanks, 9 booster stations. We have some topography challenges. We go from 620 feet above sea level to around 1,100. So we get low pressures, high pressures. We got it all. We have a lot of trees around here, a lot of forest, a lot of rock. We also have open areas. There's not. I guess that's as far as topography and that kind of thing. There are issues with pressure. We have areas that, in one spot you're at maybe 40 pounds, and then you get down the hill, and pretty soon you bump up to 150 pounds. We have a lot of areas like that. I don't think we're alone in that. Pretty much everybody around here, smaller districts, villages, kind of have the same problem. Let's see, what else do you want to know about LEACs? I don't know. We have 2 water wells, groundwater wells, that are close to the Hocking River. That's the major river that flows through this area. The Rainy collector wells, or the Rainy collector wells. They're one is 9 foot in diameter, the other one is 13 foot in diameter. And then at the bottom of those wells, there's laterals that go out and collect the groundwater. It's a pretty ample supply. We do about 1.5 million a day at our plant, but our plant capacity is 2.8, but we could actually pump around 8.5 million if we needed to. I mean, we can't produce that much water, but we have the capacity there at our wells to supply that much water.
Yeah, so Travis, you know, part of, I think, one of the whole efforts, as we've talked about, you know, you have ample supply, but there's, as we mentioned, there's also the quality issues, but just knowing where your infrastructure is and, you know, the different sources that you need to protect, that's all part of this overall program, right?
Yes, that's a big part of it. I mean, we need to know where our assets are and that type of thing. John, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, you know, definitely, you know, we've got a lot of money invested in the two wells, and developing that source water protection plan and utilizing the GIS system to work with the Ohio EPA to establish those boundaries and to mark where, you know, the critical valves and infrastructure was a major part of that, and using Collector to help, you know, it sped up and made it so much easier for us. And we're currently getting ready to start yet another project to even refine our source water protection to even a greater level, and I'm sure we'll continue to use this technology to improve it.
Great. So Travis, how'd you get there?
Well, when I came to work in 2009 here at LEAX, they had a relationship with Ohio University, which I'm an alumni of. It's nearby here. And they had the technical resources to help LEAX get started with GIS. So when I came, they were already kind of heading down the path of GIS. And I guess in my eyes, the biggest piece for the district was when in the summer they hired a student to go out and collect a bunch of points using a handheld GPS device. And we had one of our staff go with them to show them locations and stuff. That was kind of a, if they wouldn't have done that, hired the student to go out and do it, because that, you know, all summer long, that's all they're doing is taking point after point after point. We don't have a person on staff that's what they're dedicated to. They're dedicated to fixing stuff or putting in taps or, you know, hooking up meters, repairs, that type of thing. I think for LEAX that was a big chunk to get out of the way, and I think it was a good idea to use a student and have them go out and get those points. So once that piece was done, the university and LEAX put everything together, and they had their GIS page. You know, they had the mapping. They could pull it up, had an aerial behind it. So I guess they had the basic premise of GIS. Here it is. You know, it's on our computers now.
But if I could interject there, what we did with that student also is at the same time we were trying to train our employees to use that handheld device, and the idea was after one summer we would take it over, and the district wasn't complete, and after that student and that relationship with the university ended, really the next year so did our gathering of points, because our employees, you know, just weren't capable, quite frankly, of using that handheld device and to continue gathering points.
Yeah, and I agree with that. So once they had all the points, or not all the points, but, you know, the valves, the hydrants, the easy stuff out of the way, and they had the basic map, then it was on LEAX to maintain that and to also gather, you know, the new points on, you know, repairs or new valves or whatever come along. And I think it stumbled into, you know, are the guys out there repairing, or are they out there to get a point? And the problem that arose was you know, do they have the technical knowledge to get the point? That was a piece of it. And the other piece was, with our guys, was, are we out here getting points, or are we going to repair this, you know? Because there was times where they would have the handhelds out there to get a point, and it would take, you know, 2 minutes to acquire enough satellites to get accuracy. Sometimes it'd take 5 minutes. Sometimes they couldn't get anything. So they're standing around getting frustrated, and it became a source of contention, you know, when they come back to the office and, you know, we'd ask, well, did you get a point on it? Well, no, it wouldn't work. Or, you know, we got that a lot. The thing wouldn't get a point today because, you know, the satellites weren't there. So we started losing a lot of time by not getting these points, and a lot of open ditches, you know, where we had no location on, and it was starting not to work, and we were losing buy-in with the employees about GIS. So we started looking for other avenues. Go ahead, David. You want to?
Well, just so exactly, you're jumping in the next phase, but you know, we get questions a lot about, you know, that you just mentioned, you just nailed it, right? That the buy-in, and then from personal experience doing asset management in previous utility, that, you know, we did the same thing even with paper. We made mistakes where we're, you know, trying to get the field crews to collect information during a water main break, you know, that was like 2.5 pages of soil information, you know, for corrosion analysis, because being an engineer, we wanted to know everything, and we got nothing. You know, the forms weren't coming back, you know, they're coming back empty. And when we moved that down to, like, you know, 3 questions and a half page, then we started getting all the input, because, like they say, are we here to dig a main, or are we here to answer all your data questions? And so that's a key point, is, you know, that finding that right balance of the information you need to run your system, but also that's comfortable and familiar with the field crews. So I just found an answer for that in the next slide.
Yes, we did. We you know, we were looking for different avenues to go down, and this is about the time where, you know, everybody has a smartphone. The app industry is exploding. There's, you know, the iTunes and the Android, you know, getting on there and downloading an app. Of course, everything's not 99 cents anymore. It's more expensive than that. But when everything was 99 cents, you know, I was on there a lot looking for an app or something that I could take shape files and get those onto my phone. And there was mapping stuff out there, so I knew it wouldn't be long before somebody would come up with something like that. And finally, there was one out there, and it was pretty slick. You locally loaded your phone with your shape files, go in there and set up the coordinates, and then boom, you had like a Google map behind it, and then you had all your assets or whatever shape files you loaded on there right in front of you on your phone. And I was like, man, this is slick. This is cool. So when I showed our employees that, they were like, man, I want it. Everybody wanted it on their phone, because, you know, everybody knows how to zoom in and zoom out on Google, and, you know, tap the screens. It's all intuitive. So when we got that app on everybody's phone, you know, it was kind of the aha moment, big eye opener. That's where we needed to head, because they liked it a lot. They could jump on there anytime they wanted to and see the system. If you had a leak at night and employee A needed to call employee B and say, hey, get on your phone, you need to close the valve at the intersection of, you know, Chase and Smith. No, it's not the valve on the other side, it's this valve. You see it on your phone? Yes, I see it. Boom. You know, it was a real easy way for them to see our entire district, attain a lot of information visually. That was it. That was the moment. So,
great. So you brought them from, I don't want to use this stuff, to, holy cow, I need to have this stuff.
Yes. Everybody wanted it, and they were showing friends, look, here's our water district. You know, it was pretty cool, and they bought into it. And so since that point, you know, I just kept looking. I know that Esri had some other apps out there, but I knew that they would probably come out with something. And it wasn't very long after we found this app that they come out with Collector. So I downloaded that immediately and started messing around. So once Collector came out, to me it was pretty apparent that like ArcPad was kind of on its way out. Like this was going to be the tool to use to go out in the field, collect points, do, you know, they've taken it beyond what I thought they'd do, but I mean, you know, like I said, I'm not a GIS person, and that's not my background, but like I said before, this is all pretty intuitive. You can figure it out pretty easily. I guess the only piece that was kind of missing was having the accuracy of gathering points.
So Travis, that's what I love about your story. You're not a GIS person, but you were so motivated and you were looking for these apps and you were keeping an eye out for something that would meet your needs. So I'm a little geeking out right now, but I just really enjoy talking to you and hearing how motivated you were and how you're not a GIS person and yet, you know, you found Collector for ArcGIS. So I know talking to you previously that you had some concerns about using it. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Okay. I guess the two big concerns that we had, one being accuracy, the other was being connected to the internet, data connectivity. Because we're in southeastern Ohio, we don't have cell towers everywhere. If you're along the main roads, you're good to go. But we got 500 miles of water line, and they go up and down and all around and through places you can't believe that people are driving track hose to put in water line. So we have connectivity. But when Collector came out with the offline option, that was great. I mean, now we could download that map, so if we go out in the middle of the forest, well, not in the middle of the forest, but, you know, along the roads, and we knew that there wasn't going to be a cell tower or internet connectivity, that we could now download that map, take it with us, get our points, and then once we got back to a connection, you know, we could upload it. I mean, that was a big concern, because if we had to be connected all the time, it wasn't going to work. It wouldn't, because our guys would go out and they would forget if they're connected, they're not connected, and then that thing would just sit in the back seat. That's what would happen. I know it.
Well, and quite honestly, that's, you know, as we talk to some of a lot of the rural water systems and some of your fellow, you know, circuit riders out there, that, you know, that's what the ArcPad solution offered back in the day, was that disconnected functionality. And when we start talking about Collector, everyone's like, oh, it can go offline, and yeah, it can. So yeah, that's exactly that functionality that's really starting to revolutionize the folks out there in small water systems.
Yeah, and the other piece, you know, like using ArcPad, it worked great, but you'd have to bring them in, you'd have to unload them, you know, and do your deal, and then send them back out. It was a little bit cumbersome, compared to what Collector is. I mean, you take the point and it's there. I mean, it's uploaded. You can hop on your desktop, you can see it real time. I mean, it's so easy. It's so easy. Compared
You're
to
my
what
new best friend, Travis. So that's amazing. So you have your data connectivity issues solved, and you needed to locate assets in the field somewhat accurately. So I know I'm jumping ahead here because I'm so excited about how you went about implementing the technology and testing it to make sure it was really what you wanted and that it met your needs. So, and let our audience know how you diligently went through the process before, you know, taking this a little larger scale.
Gotcha. So when I figured out that we had that online access, So I got on there and started messing around and started creating maps, and it's really easy. I mean, you get on there, and like for us instance, once I figured out how to upload things and which files to upload, whether it's a shape file or whatever file you want to use, I mean, within 30 minutes, I had our district from our desktop to online. So, you know, I'm looking at my desktop, sitting in my chair, and then I got Collector over here on my iPad, and I'm like, wow, here's the entire district from my desktop onto this iPad in 30 minutes. You know, and I can walk outside, and I got the little blue dot, and, you know, it's pretty amazing. And the things that I didn't know how to do or I needed help on, you just jump online and get into one of the communities, and you throw out the question, it's going to get answered. There's a lot of, I like this stuff. and it's great. I mean, they're so helpful, so helpful. Within, you know, easily a day, within a few hours, you're going to have, you know, at least 2 or 3 answers to the question that you had. And then, you know, once you have that, you kind of just keep plodding along, keep moving forward, because you're not the only one that has that question. A lot of times, if there's something that you think of, you can get on there and search, and, you know, you'll find that answer. And that's how I got to here. I mean, it was just jumping online and going through the communities and you know, asking for a little bit of help to keep me moving forward.
Well, talk a little bit about the, you know, the familiar interface, right? That the reason why you kind of went from the GPS handhelds to Collector that was running on an iPad. I mean, talk a little bit about, you know, because iPads were being used before you even got into Collector, correct?
Yeah. The app that I found that we could upload shape files, everybody had that on their phone, and, you know, it's like I said, you pinched and you zoom in, you zoom out, and it had the same sort of familiar kind of tools to it. So they were familiar with that. So when we jumped to Collector, and, you know, you guys, your big things, the 3 clicks or less, when they pick up the iPad, everybody intuitively knows how to use it. So you see the familiar things that they had already seen before on the earlier app that we used, but everybody knows how to use the iPad. I mean, you give it to a 5-year-old, they know how to do it. Everything's just a tap. So, you know, trying to get our guys to use them was super easy. There's not much training. Say, hey, you want to change the layer or turn the layer off? Here it is. You want to measure? Here it is. Everything's at the top. You know, it's not buried. You know, you can get a little caught up with, you tap this, then you tap into another menu, and then another sub-menu, and then you forget where things are. It's not like that at all. It's everything's right in front of you.
Yeah, I mean, we've got 50-year-old guys that have been, you know, running a backhoe their entire career that are now out there collecting points for us, and with, you know, very limited amount of time of instructions from Travis. I mean, yeah.
Well, and that's what we've been hearing with all the rural water districts is it's got to be easy because, one, we have a job to do, right? We got to do our daily jobs, and, you know, this data collection, they didn't want it to be a burden. So as long as it's intuitive, as long as it's natural and doesn't slow them down, they're willing to do it. Even us old 50-year-olds can adapt to that.
So Travis, I see in the picture that you have your iPad device on a pole. It looks like you have your receiver there at the top. Do you want to talk about how you configured that and tested it for the high accuracy part?
Sure. So we did some online searching for the receivers that we wanted to use. You know, obviously we needed the high accuracy aspect of it. There's not a lot out there to choose from. We went with the Aero 100. I reached out to an environmental company here in Ohio, and it's what they used a lot of, and he recommended. There were some specs in it that I liked. Being able to take a, well, this is a different idea down the road, but the iPad itself, if you had somebody go out there with a pole, let's say you're higher up, let's say you're like the, I don't know, the King GIS guy, and you want to sit in the truck with the iPad and send out, you know, your little buddy in the rain or the cold or the snow, he can walk, you know, 300 feet over to that valve if you want to get a mark on it, and you can just sit in the truck and grab the point because a Bluetooth connection can go so far. So that was one of the things. I have a good idea about how to use that, but I'll share that at a different time. But yeah, we needed high accuracy, so we went with the Aero 100. What I have on that pole in that picture is just a simple,
Surveyor's tape, right?
yeah, it's just a surveyor's pole with the I can't remember the company's name, but it's just something to grab the iPad to hold on to it. Obviously the antenna's up on top. Pretty simple. Just your plain Jane kind of pole. It ain't nothing special. I mean, the special piece is the iPad and the receiver and the antenna.
I remember when we talked before that you had said you actually rented the receiver for a little while to give it a try out and make sure that the pieces worked together and it was performing to meet your expectations. So I think that's a really great idea, and maybe some people don't realize that there's an option to just rent it and try it out before making a decision, because even if you have a smaller budget, it's still a budget that impacts your organization. So that was really great. I like that part of your story.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't want to jump, you know, feet first, but well, I guess we jumped feet first, but we didn't want to spend a bunch of money on something that was just going to sit on a shelf. We wanted to take a test drive with it first to see if it was going to do what we needed it to do. The Aero happens to be iPad certified, so I kind of wanted to check to make sure the Bluetooth connected well and that type of thing, and to see what kind of accuracies we were getting. It worked out well. You know, I was glad we rented it and tried it out. Everything connected real easy. It worked out really well.
So I guess that's a good place to move into your concerns eliminated slide, where you did have positive results to what I call your pilot project. I know we've talked a lot, so I feel like I need to get out there and collect some points with you and your guys.
Well, yeah, the connectivity issue, I mean, that was pretty much resolved when Collector came out with the offline option. It's been a very, very handy piece, because there's days where they go out and they're away from civilization for a few hours, but there are still points that we really need for our system. And let me say one other thing. You know, in 1969, they didn't care about putting in tracer wire. So a lot of our system, it was formed in 68, but in 69 through 74, there was a lot of expansion for LEACs. You know, probably 300 miles worth of water line was put in the ground, no tracer wire. So everything's coming from the employee's mind. So, I mean, I know everybody's heard this, but when those older guys retire, so does the information, unless you get it on paper or in the computer or something like that. So that's why for LEACs, it's really key that we gotta, you know, go out and get these points, and accurate points. We need to go back out and be able to go to that point and find that valve or dig up that water line again if we need to, because we need to adjust our GIS mapping so that it accurately reflects what's actually in the ground. You know, and the accurate piece of it, I know there's, with this receiver you can also do an RTK network to make it even more accurate. Let me talk about that real quick. For us, if we're, that receiver's sub-meter, you can get, you know, centimeter accuracy if you're on the RTK network. which corrects it. It also has like its own onboard correction. For LEAX, if I'm getting points and there's sub-meter, it seems like most of our stuff's coming in half a meter or better. We're looking for like a 9-inch, valve lid, or a meter pit lid that's, I don't know, 15 inches in diameter. If we can't find that within that accuracy, there's something wrong with us. And if it's a leak, or if you're going out there to mark a line for a spot dig for some reason, hoe operator is going to rake across that point, 4-foot swath. He's going to look for that ditch. So if you can get a mark on it, so if we had a GPS point and it's within half a meter, man, we're going to find that water line really quick. But so actually, it's
everyone
important.
says, get me within a bucket width, right? Get me within a bucket.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not so concerned with like, 4-inch accuracy or something like that. It's nice. It's really, if I could get it everywhere, I'd take it. But if I have to wait on that point or something like that, or it slows our guys down, and they're not going to like that. So I guess what I'm saying, if I'm in that half-meter spot and somebody goes out there and they mark it because we had a previous point right there, man, our hoe bucket guy, he's going to find that no problem. No problem. In the RTK, yeah, you do have to be connected to the internet to use that. So we use it when we can, but like I said, if they're out and we don't have the data connectivity, and we're offline, we're still half a meter. So that's good enough for LEAX at this point. We're getting points where we were getting nothing before.
And just to make a point, those pop-ups, that information, that's coming right out of Collector.
Yes, that's right.
And that's actually a fairly new functionality in Collector, where it's allowing you to have that high accuracy metadata stored and saved so that you can go back and see exactly how accurate your data point is.
That's right, and that's really handy, being able to pass that metadata through. So when you do click on it, you know how accurate it is. I can tell the guys, hey, this one is spot on. Like you said, David, the hoe bucket's width. You can also tell, though, if you get around a group of trees, which is common around here, then you actually may go up, to a meter or something like that. And I can at least let them know, hey, that point you took, it's not so good. Maybe he can't go out and get another one that's better just because of the growth of the trees or something. But I can at least give them a heads up and say, hey, you're probably going to have to scratch around a little more than what you're used to.
Awesome. So I'm sure everyone's excited about your next slide, and we'll have lots of questions about this. So what did it cost you? What did you have to invest to get to where you are now?
Okay. So we run Desktop Basic. So we had the free online subscription. So I used that to set everything up. So the only piece that we were really missing, because we already had iPads using the other app, they're in the field. So the only thing that we really had to spend money on was the Aero receiver, and that was around $2,900. I also bought that additional bracket so I could hold the iPad on the pole, and that was $50 off Amazon. So we didn't have a whole lot in it to just to go out and test it. I mean, $3,000 is, yeah, for a small, district or a village or something like that. That's a little bit, probably not in their budget here and there, but I think they can scrape that up to get this. I mean, I can't stress how easy it is to set this stuff up and go out and start gathering points. If you had nothing, if I was a small district or a village and I had nothing, I had no GIS, ballparking in my head, so you spend $2,500, that will get you 5 users license for collector. So then you would spend another $2,900 on a receiver, $100 for a pole, well, maybe a couple $100 for a pole, and $500 iPad, which I guess you would have to buy an iPad. Maybe you want to use your phone. I don't know. But you know, $6,000, $5,000, you have everything you need to go out and collect assets, manage your assets. You know, it is the easiest way to get something up and going if you have nothing, and inexpensive. I mean, $6,000 to have accuracy and the ability to go back and show your employees, hey, this is where the water lines are, these are where the valves are. With the asset items that are coming down from the EPA, which it sounds like everybody's going to have to do this, they're going to have to look for a solution that's going to help them satisfy what the EPA wants. And I can't think of a better tool to use than this, because setting up the maps and the layers, it's very easy. And if you're on a budget, which everybody's on a budget, it's relatively inexpensive to get a whole lot of information stored, you know, on ArcGIS Online, and you don't have to maintain it. It's there. It's always there, and you can connect to it anytime you want from any computer in the world.
So John, as the general manager, and I know LEAX's you know, vision, mission statement is, you know, quality on tap, but you also serve on the Ohio board for the Ohio Rural Water Association. How does this make you feel, you know, with amongst your peers and your customers of LEAX Water District, you know, in your response to these EPA regs coming down? Hasn't this kind of improved your overall management capabilities?
Well, definitely. As Travis was alluding to, there, you know, based on the activities that, you know, that unfortunately that have taken place in Flint, Michigan, and we've had several instances here, you know, in Ohio, that there's some new regs coming down. Asset management is definitely a hot topic, and without a good inventory of your assets, and I think a good basis of starting that is the GIS points, you know, knowing what assets and where they are. So I mean, yeah, I feel good on where, definitely on where we are at, to make sure we're in compliance with what they're wanting. And I think, you know, there's some good opportunity for us to, as a Ohio Rural Water Association and other groups, to use this technology because of the inexpensive application to get this word out and help these smaller villages and districts, as Travis said, because that's, but not just in Ohio. I think it's important, you know, across the United States and even, you know, with Esri's, you know, help, you know, I mean, across the world, really, you know, the applications of this. So no, I feel very good, you know, with our position and what we can do with it.
You just came off of the National Rural Water Association's Water Pro conference a week ago or so in Orlando. I mean, was this a topic of discussion there?
Yes, there was definitely you know, a lot of talk you know, about this around groups. It created some excitement, and I'll say, you know, you know, Travis was gaining a lot of notoriety in groups just because, you know, within the Ohio group at least. But yeah, you know, it's definitely something that is gaining notoriety and some excitement.
Yeah, I hear that Travis gets stopped in the streets now for his autograph. Is that true?
All the time.
All right, boys, we are going to move on to some of the questions. We're quickly running out of time. So Travis, I know you mentioned $2,500 for a 5-pack, but we really didn't talk about that much, and we have a few questions coming in about how you rolled this out to the field crew. So I know you did purchase a 5-pack of ArcGIS Online for your field crew to use so that they could have identities and log in and have access to the system. Do you want to talk about that process a little bit?
Sure. So I set this all up on the free account that we had, and actually we put it out in the field on the free account. But I knew that we were going to have more users, so we purchased the 5-user license. One, because well, we got 2 guys out in the field using it now. We bought another Arrow, so we have 2 out in the field. And then I want an account for myself to do the stuff that I need to do. But now the office staff, I need to have them an account because they like looking at it too now. So everybody's, I thought 5, oh wow, that's going to last. But now 5, now for me is thinking, well, I could use a couple more now. But just because it's so easy to use, you log in and there's the map. It's an easy process. I just got online, got them, and I made a quick phone call to Esri, and we had our 5 users up and rolling. The one thing, let me mention real quick, I know we're running out of time. We have a big project going on in this county. It's a sewer project, and we have to do a bunch of spot digs for this project because there's locations where their sewer line is going to cross our water line, and they need some information like depth and location. So this couldn't have come at a better time with Collector and this high accuracy GNSS, receiver. So we have guys going out and spot digging, and we're taking receivers and we're grabbing the points. But I created a map in ArcGIS Online that I sent out to surveyors, because there's surveyors working for the county that's going out and putting lath in for manholes, and they're laying out the alignment, but they're also picking up the points that we're getting, because we leave a lath behind too that has the depth on it. But that map is keeping our office staff up to date as to what has been called in for an OOPS locate. We have particular dots on the map that says, hey, this is where we need to dig. So each one of those we call in to our OOPS call, I think it's 811, call before you dig. I think everybody's got one. So our staff keeps up to date because they see a GPS point appear. They know that point has been dug, and we can change the color of the dot that we used. And I have sent that map out to the surveyors. So the surveyors, they know which locations are completed, and they can go out and get their shot on it. I know I went a little overboard, but that whole spot dig map, I was really proud of myself on that one. But
I'm actually glad you talked about that because it explains how your office staff is using it. I was actually going to ask you about that. So I know we have lots of questions coming in, and we have a few more minutes, so we're just going to move along. We had a couple of questions asking about your field crews and your confidence level in the data that they're collecting, and the amount of training. I know when I talked to you, that wasn't really a big problem for you. So if you could just talk about your confidence in the data they're collecting and how that is helping you to have a accurate database. I'm sure you can cover several of the questions we got.
Sure. As far as training the staff, there's not much training. I mean, they pick it up very quickly. None of them had any problems. They may call it the question now and then, but it's never anything that's complicated. It's so easy. There was no training. I mean, I have to show them, okay, this is the layer. You show them one time. This is the layer button. Turn it on, turn it off. Tap this, and you got your point. Put in the information. I mean, it just kind of pops up. It's there. There is no training. I mean, there is training, but
he literally goes out in the parking lot here, and he conducts it here on site for a half hour at the most, and they're off and running. And we've probably got 4 guys now that are capable of doing it, and it's that simple to do it.
Yeah, it's just tap. Tap right here. You got your point, and the little window pops over, and you put in your information. And then with that, the major update, or not the major update, but the update that came where you're allowed to pass the metadata from the receiver into collector. That's what I'm using to verify the accuracy of the data coming in. I mean, I hop on there and look to see what it's at. If it's really bad, it's really bad. I know that. So it's like I said before. If they go out into that location, they can take another point, or I can at least let them know that, hey, this point wasn't so good. You need to expand your search area. Obviously we'd like for them to be as accurate as possible, but there's just going to be times where it's not possible on that day, or it's tree growth or whatever. I at least have a way to verify that that point is within lee axis tolerances, I'll say.
Right. Okay, I'm going to quickly move to another question about collecting those points. So I know we spent a lot of time talking about the points, but people want to know. So there's a couple questions about above ground collection of assets and below ground. So I know you had said that when the crews are making repairs or in the ground, and you had that one picture of your crew, that they're taking points on that pipe location. Are you doing any data collection above ground for underground assets, and do you have challenges in accuracy? How do you manage that above ground versus below ground data point collection?
I think I see where they're going with this. Obviously you can see a valve, you can see a hydrant, you can't see your water line. So you're right, when we go out to repair, they get a shot on that line. When you see a valve, you can kind of guess as to where it's at. Like usually we'll have maybe 2 valves like on a T, and you can kind of piece things together. I think maybe where they're going, we don't have tracer wire, like I said before. If you did have tracer wire, I suppose you could tracer wire, mark it, and then GPS it if you wanted to. But I've had a couple questions now about actually locating the buried asset using GIS, using GPS high accuracy receiver to mark your locates for an OOPS call. So I'm not sure if that's the direction they're going. We don't do that. We go based on off our as-builds, but the 2 people that have asked me this question have had mapping that was surveyed by surveyors. So they know that that asset is dead on. So if they can get that into to collector, and they had a high accuracy receiver, then I think that you could probably mark that line. I'd want to test that a few times before I'd say, yeah, our water line's right here. But I think they want to locate the buried asset based off what they see on the iPad, is my guess. We don't do that. We're not that accurate.
Right. Well, so that kind of brings us, I guess, to a good closure on some of the discussion, and my friends with the American Society of Civil Engineers, there's lots of there's a new standard that's coming out with data collection, and there is that concept of I can only guarantee accuracy if I see the asset, and for underground assets, some folks are saying, well, at the valve keyhole I can verify the asset at that point because I can see it. I'm taking that point, and then in between 2 points I have to lower the accuracy metadata because I don't see the asset, but I'm pretty darn sure that pipe runs between 2 valves, and I can do that. But so there is lots of different data collection best practices, if you will, and that's for possibly another webinar. But you know, in the end, one of the things, you know, Collector, the high accuracy edition, if you will, of Collector has really started to take, you know, gain popularity. But you know, John, maybe I want to ask one question though. This doesn't replace the need for surveying in the district, though, right? I mean, there's still this is high accuracy, but it's not like you can stop using surveyors, correct?
No, not by any means. We still, you know, whenever we're wanting, you know, the high accuracy, you know, we still hire. We have a relationship with a couple of surveyors that, you know, we're definitely going to maintain for, you know, for that level of accuracy. So no, we'd never, you know, terminate any relationships.
There's times when you need topo that only a surveyor can get.
Yeah.
You know, you can pull some stuff off the county, but you need the surveyor.
Exactly. So you know, I mean, here we are then, as we integrate all things, you know, within the engineering world, you know, CAD data and GIS and surveying grade, you know, high accuracy grade. So it's all a large ecosystem of tools that you know we all need out there. So, but again, I think to Travis's point early on, it's in a familiar interface. They can collect really high accurate data for their asset registry very quickly, and it's no longer a burden. It's just part of their standard workflow. So I think with that, Krista, we've pretty much wrapped up.
Yeah, that's about it. We're definitely out of time. I know we had a lot of questions and we had some more technical questions that we didn't get to. Please be aware that we will answer these questions. We will post them online so that you can review the Q&A document. Also feel free to reach out to me at any time and I can help answer questions or point you in the right direction. I want to thank Travis and John for joining us today. I really enjoyed the webinar. I hope all of you did as well. And hopefully you'll join us again next month. Thank you.